Good morning and welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm Joe Taylor. This morning, another in the ongoing series of programs presented by the Regional Early Learning Resource Center. The program, through the Northwest Institute of Research, oversees a grant from the Office of Child Development and Early Learning at the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services and the Department of Education. The goal of the program is to improve the outcomes for young children as they prepare for school. John Posa from the Early Learning Resource Center is the host of the program and is with us throughout the series. And this morning, John, I understand we have two for the price of one, right?
Two for the price of one. In fact, we have all three of us are at different locations. We're here in DuBois, and we have somebody from Dauphin County in the Harrisburg area and someone from Franklin County. So I have Karen Grimm-Thomas, who's the Director of External Relations at the Pennsylvania Office of Child Development and Early Learning, and Bob Thomas, who is a county commissioner from Franklin County and a board member of the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania. Welcome to the program, Karen and Bob.
Thank you, and we're glad to join you.
Oh, thank you so much. And just for our listeners, Karen and Bob are not related. However, Karen does have a does or doesn't have an Uncle Bob. I'm not sure. Yes, but you may, listeners are probably wondering, okay, why do we have Karen and Bob on? Well, they are involved in a lot of work in terms of working with communities, with families, with human service organizations, Head Start, and so forth, as part of a mission that they call Hope from the Start. Tell us a little bit, and Bob, Karen, you can go first, whoever wants to go first. Tell us a little bit about what this is all about.
Well, first of all, as you all may know, there is a lot of brain science about the development of a child and the importance of the prenatal to 3 time period. That said, as a county commissioner, I see the impact that we have on our correction system, our human services, what it costs for schools when kids aren't ready and they come in, developmentally behind. And if we don't stop this cycle, we are going to continue our spending and our country is going to go bankrupt. So therefore, we need to drive the focus to getting programs and services into these homes from the very beginning, because that's where it's all happening. And there is just so much science and so much data that's been done. It's the highest rate of return on any investment is that birth to 3 years. And that will give us great, great dividends. And that's why Hope from the Start was started in Franklin County. And it's a collaboration of multiple programs, as you mentioned a while ago, from Head Start to the schools, the multiple county human services, the healthcare community, the libraries, and many others. And the purpose is to educate parents on why this is important, like I just said, and the importance of how this will shape their child's life forever. And that's what it's all about in a few short sentences.
Thanks, Bob. And Karen, you may be able to chime in. As the Director of External Relations at OCDEL, I was reading, you kind of recently had an event that was held in Chambersburg called Our Babies, Our Future, the science behind early childhood education for children and families. And Bob, you were involved in the planning of that. But the emphasis is, okay, folks know about the value of preschool, but we may be missing the point of starting earlier than preschool in working with our children, starting with the very beginning of the infancy of a child. Isn't that correct, Karen?
Yes, definitely. So at OCDEL, I think here in Pennsylvania, we've been really fortunate, particularly in this administration. We have had lots of investments in terms of our pre-K age kids. And, those investments have gone back to the Rendell administration. But moving forward, this administration, Governor Wolf has really signaled to OCDEL that they're paying attention to that data that's coming out about brain development and the impact that we can have if we start even younger, and has really sent a clear signal to OCDEL that we need to not stop our work around pre-K kids. We definitely need to keep that momentum going, but that we really need to be thinking about how to reach out and impact families and kids at a younger age. And so when we at OCDEL heard about what was going on in Franklin County with the local collaboration that they had going, bringing all of these different organizations together, it was really, it was almost as though they were a bit ahead of us, that these were the kinds of things that we were already thinking about. We have our early learning resource centers that we've just launched, that really that's what the goal of those are, is to kind of bring everybody to the table. So we were really excited to hear the great work that they were doing down there, and the focus, in terms of bringing the community together, but the focus on infants and toddlers.
Speaking as a layperson and someone who does the show every other week with John, there are so many well-meaning entities promoting the importance of early childhood education. How does Hope from the Start differentiate and stand out from other programs and efforts of this ilk?
Well, that's a good question. Well, first of all, ours isn't exactly the first. I learned about this. I'm a very active member of the National Association of Counties. And to be clear, this is a priority for NACO. And if anyone saw the county news, there was a huge article about early childhood collaborations and just the importance of how this is important, as I mentioned earlier. But that said, we are simply doing what we've learned from others. And the best thing you can do is to just get the parties together, first start talking. There are barriers, let us be clear. I mean, there's confidentiality things, HIPAA and FERPA, and just keep going on and on. But to keep it simple, we have already begun with one collaboration, and that's with one of our healthcare providers, and their program that they have for pregnant moms is being connected immediately with Head Start, so they can do the research and help them to get started. But the reason it's important, and I'm going to get back to this because I think this needs to be said. There's so many children being raised in toxic environments, where there's drugs or alcohol, or there's fighting or bickering, or just multiple things. These children learn these behaviors, and they learn them quickly. Anyone who's ever seen a child, I realize I'm on a tangent here, and when they see a 1-year-old and see how they're always looking around, they're observing and they're learning for life. And what they see is what they will become, and that's why this is so important.
There's no question about that. Head Start does a fantastic job of not only in working with families, particularly in the home. This is outside of their preschool program, but they are also putting a greater focus on infant and toddler years, and early intervention. I can't help but wonder that the Wolf administration has and through the budget is expanding to for additional funding for earlier intervention, particularly in doing more home visits. And one of the main reasons is that for these issues that you bring up, Bob, but the hardest hit being this opioid epidemic. Talk a little bit about how that is affecting families.
Well, Karen, do you want to try that one? I can answer it too.
Yeah.
Well, I think just I can talk from the state perspective, but I do think, Bob, when I'm done, we should have you. I should throw it to you because I think you can talk about at the local level what's happening. But yes, the Wolf administration is. We're really fortunate. Last year, we got our first ever line item to have some state money put into our evidence-based home visiting programs that were being supported with federal dollars through the Maternal, Infant, and Early Childhood Home Visitation Grant, which we call MCV. We like acronyms.
Right.
And we've been able, this year we're fortunate that, again, the governor put in a request and the legislature thought it was a good idea and they funded it where we're able to expand those home visiting programs and really take a look at communities that have been hardest hit by the opioid crisis, with the idea that home visitors are in this unique position to really kind of, because they're in families' homes, because they have that really early contact with families and with young babies, that whether it's a family that actually has somebody that has a substance use disorder, or whether they're just being impacted with it because they're living in a community that has a high rate, those home visitors really are in a position to offer some support that I think our, what we traditionally think of as schools maybe aren't in the position to do. So we're very excited by this initiative, and I know, again, that Bob could probably talk a little bit more about on the ground what this impact has had on communities.
Well, the drug epidemic, and everybody knows about that, is affecting our children. The number of children born with drug dependencies has skyrocketed in our county, and I would imagine it's true everywhere else. I see the CYS numbers. I believe in 2017 it was over 50 children that were born with a drug dependency. We recently, in our county, had a 3-year-old that died of a drug overdose, and that's still being investigated by the police. But, I mean, this is a serious problem. These are toxic environments, and if we don't change this, it's just setting our country up for some bad things in the future.
Yeah, and it's particularly difficult when you have young parents with young kids, and sometimes those children need to be removed from that household, at least on a temporary basis, just to ensure the health of that child. That's sometimes difficult to do, isn't it?
It is, but that's something that Children and Youth does on a regular basis, although it's not all the time. They try to keep the families unified but change the behavior. But the thing is, with this hope from the start and our initiative, it's about reaching out to the new parents to educate them, and every parent wants better for their child. And if they see themselves with issues, then maybe they could come up with a behavior pattern that might change. And that's why we have all these various human services, from drug and alcohol, to mental health, and just keep going. That if they need, we connect them with the program and services to help them. And then helping them, they'll help their child and make sure they know the importance of cuddling the baby and reading to the baby and singing to the baby and showing them the love that they need to have in order to grow up in a proper way.
Bob, does Hope from the Start in Franklin County, is it a blanket approach to its outreach, or does it zero in on specific geographic, demographic areas that may be in greater need, or specific individuals? How is the approach determined?
Well, first of all, the very first step is with many that are born on Medicare, and so that's the Keystone Rural Health Center that's established this. But our goal is to reach out to every new parent. Every parent. I remember when I was a young dad first time. What do you know about raising a child? Nothing. Right. And I wish I would have had what we will be providing in the future. And it's just basically the ABCs of raising a child, and it's not rocket science. But I can't help but remember a song that I heard, many years ago. We were poor, but we had love. But that's the one thing Daddy made sure of. And that's why we need to reach out, to bring back some of the basic things that the past generations had that they don't have as much today.
Yeah, and as they say, the hardest job anyone will ever have is being a parent with no instructions, especially if you're a first-time parent. And that's what this is all about, is it not? And Karen or Bob, if you want to chime in. Bob, I know you started this effort in Franklin County, and you're a board member of the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania. So tell me some of the work that's being done to bring this across the state, this movement.
Well, we're trying to get the word out, and we're working with OCDEL and through Karen and her organization and others. Legislators have all been contacted. Right now, this is not a top priority for CCAP, that's the County Commissioners Association of PA, right. But I have a suspicion that it will be at some point. But, as more and more get engaged in this thing, I think it's going to continue to get on the radar screen for everyone.
And I think that's really where OCDEL sees our role. So we have our early learning resource centers that are all, they've just been launched, and everybody's getting some momentum around them. But really, OCDEL, it's really our role to kind of see where we're seeing real local innovation, where we're seeing really great community partnerships, and to learn from them. every community is set up differently. Every community has different players involved in it. But where we can see things that are working well and then highlight them and bring them and make sure that our early learning resource centers are aware of different ways of doing things, that's really what our role is. So when we were able to come down to Franklin County and have some conversations and be part of some meetings and see the work that's happening, it gives us a really good example to share with other communities about how they might start something similar. And we really know that a lot of this stuff is going on right now.
Oh, yes.
It's a matter of also getting some highlights, getting a spotlight on it. So a spotlight on Franklin County kind of shows other places that we want to hear about the good work that you're doing as well.
Absolutely, and that's why we wanted to have you on the program. Karen Grimm-Thomas, Director of External Relations at the Pennsylvania Office of Child Development and Early Learning, and Bob Thomas, County Commissioner from Franklin County and board member of the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania, are our guests this morning. And, you know, I couldn't help, as I read the article about the event that you held in Chambersburg to kind of talk about Hope from the Start. The woman whose last name is Annette, her name is Annette Sear-Foss, who's the executive director of the Franklin County Head Start. You know, she put it so eloquently at the end. She said, she asked this of everyone: be a noticer. Be the one caring adult who's crazy about a child. Start a relationship as that one person, that one caring adult for that family. And she says the benefits will trickle down to the child. You know, we've talked about that on several of our programs, about all it takes is one caring adult to make the difference in a child. And whether it's you're a relative or you're just a good friend, that's the difference between two children growing up in difficult situations and one being more resilient than the other, is that caring adult. Did you guys want to comment on that?
Well, it's so true. I mean, my goodness, just take a small tree that's planted by a professional. They will put a solid stake in the ground, tie it there. Why do they do that? There will be forces of nature that will cause that tree and its root structure to grow crooked unless you hold it tight. That's what that caring adult person does in that child's life. It helps to give that child direction and nurturing. But hopefully it's going to be mom and dad. But, you know,
Right.
We know there's a lot of dads missing in our families today. So it's a challenge for a single mom, particularly a single mom that might be in poverty and maybe doesn't have a family nearby. I mean, there's lots of issues that come into place, and we need to give them as much support as they can possibly have. And again, that investment is a tremendous investment that will reap dividends down the road.
Absolutely. And Karen, we had a fairly successful year budget-wise going into the new year, in that we had increases pretty much across the board for early childhood. Where do you think this budget is going to have the greatest impact for the better for kids?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I'm really hoping on the child care side of things. I think, again, we're a state that years ago really recognized the importance of investing in pre-K, and we've made just amazing gains in that. And I think now this recognition that we also need to be thinking about what's happening with our younger kids is an important thing too. And I see a real shift in that. I see a shift in the legislature understanding that. So I'm really hopeful that the idea that we can take our child care, we've got a lot of really good quality child care out there. And how do we elevate that? How do we really ensure that all kids have access to it? Because while we have a lot of good quality child care out there, we know we also have a lot of places where there's just not a lot of options for families. And, you know, being able to use those dollars to create more options for families, more quality options for families, is a real goal of OCDEL in this upcoming year.
Yeah, and one of the things I know we wanted to put an emphasis on working with infants and toddlers, and I think for a while there, in terms of the additional funding, we may not have had the extensive research and data to support that as we do now. That has certainly changed, hasn't it?
Yes, we've learned so much about brain development and just, how children are wired and how our brains work. And we understand so much more about the interaction with the environment, that the environment actually shapes children's brains. So that it's become just really imperative. We recognize that we have to ensure that kids are in safe and stimulating environments if we want them to succeed, if we want their brains to develop the way the way they should.
I wanted to mention.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Yep. No, absolutely. I mean, to take another point, part of this educational component that every parent needs to know, because it helps to connect the dots. When a child is born, their brain is 25% of an adult-sized brain. At 1 year, it grows to 75%. That's a significant growth in 1 year, and it just makes the point as to why this time is so important in the child's life. And they're going to be learning to talk. They're going to be learning to, there's so many things they'll be gaining during this first time period, and it will drive what happens down the road.
Absolutely. In your effort, I can't help but throw out a contact that would be more than happy to work in this whole movement. Her name is Dr. Judy Cameron. We've had her as a guest on this program before. She's at the University of Pittsburgh. She's a psychiatrist and a neuroscientist, so she studies brain research. She has her own lab there. And she's she has a platform now where she goes and speaks with, families and community groups to explain brain research and how parents can understand it in easier layman's terms about how important it is to them in working with their children from the time that they're babies. So I encourage you to reach out to her. And she recently presented at an early childhood summit in Altoona through the Blair County Chamber of Commerce, and so she's an excellent resource. But we have 2 minutes left. We have 2 minutes left, and I wanted to, either one of you can chime in. Tell me now where we're headed. What's the next step for Hope from the Start in terms of expanding this outreach to other families?
Well, there have been conversations. And I was just talking to Karen a little while ago about something that OCDEL might be able to help us with, but it's a little too early to announce. But there has been conversations with school districts and Head Start and others for additional collaborations, which could have a mammoth impact here in Franklin County. We just need to see. Where do we go in the state? I think one thing is important. I think we need to continue to educate our legislators. Again, oftentimes legislators think that early education is pre-K or maybe Head Start or kindergarten, right, where actually it's that prenatal to 3 period, which is absolutely the most critical, and it's not really all that expensive, but it's just that's very, very important. I'm just going to reiterate. I know there's only like a minute and a half to go, and then I'm going to turn it back to Karen so she can close it. But, I heard a comment at one of the NACO conferences here a couple of months ago, and the comment was made, if we take care of our human infrastructure through early education, our capital infrastructure will take care of itself. And that is an absolute true statement.
Boy, that is so well said, Bob. And you know what? That's so fitting because our time is up. And Karen Grimm-Thomas, Director of External Relations at OCDEL, and Bob Thomas, County Commissioner from Franklin County. Wonderful program. I hope to have you back again. Thank you so much.
Well, John, thank you for having the conversation. This is just a great conversation to keep having.
Thank you.
And that's our program for today. We'll be back in 2 weeks at this same time. In the meantime, you can go online to learn more at papromiseforchildren.com. For John Posa and the Early Learning Resource Center, I'm Joe Taylor. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.